A long time ago, in a town far away, actually pretty close, in Spearfish, South Dakota, Mitch Kleinsasser and I, Guy Ferris, were dreaming and scheming and talking about, wouldn't it be fun to take a boat down the entire Missouri River? In the spring of 2014, we put that plan into action. Started talking about what would it take? What are we going to need? How can we get down the river safely, efficiently, and get around each dam without having to have somebody there to portage us? Well, we figured we wanted a pontoon boat, because if we're going to be on the boat all day, we'd want a boat that would be easy to walk around on, comfortable. And it had to have a steering wheel so somebody wouldn't have to sit next to a tiller handle motor all day and run that. And we wanted something small enough to draft in shallow water and easy to pull and easy to maneuver. But we also had to have something that could get over the dams, which could take some ingenuity to create something like that. We knew our friend Mark Ullman had a pontoon boat that would work. It was small enough and had a nice open layout to it. We started planning how to attach fold-down wheels and a hitch that could be folded up and down for each portage. Just as that started, Mitch said he was telling our plans to his coworker. That fellow informed Mitch that his brother has a pontoon that becomes its own trailer. Wow, that might be perfect. The next day, we were on our way to Hovind, South Dakota to meet Wayne Stewie. We thought we'd hit the jackpot after viewing Wayne's boat. We talked him into selling it there on the spot. Now we didn't have to do any special customizing. Just replace the motor and we would be good.
This was the first time I knew the trip would happen. 20 years of dreaming was becoming a reality. We stopped to seek some advice from the man upstairs. My 11-year-old daughter definitely had her doubts.
Preparation. We're going to take this 1976 Sea King 35 horsepower motor off and put a 50 horsepower Mercury 4-stroke on it. Huge day.
Yeah, a lot of configurations, you know, getting one motor on and or off and another one on.
This is all new territory for me.
Yeah. We're mariners, but not what we're fairmen. But yeah, we're going to end up moving the steering column up here. We're going to have some steering cable issues and throttle, battery, lots of stuff, but just the start of it.
It wasn't long after returning that we had our old motor off and our new motor on. We figured the driver of the boat would need the best view of the river by sitting up front. So we moved the steering wheel and the engine controls as far forward as we possibly could.
Because it was a pulley system, moving the steering wheel was much easier than originally thought. Wow, the motor fired right up. We did it right! The Sharky boys decided we needed shelter from a potential storm.
3:30.
Hold on one second. What are we doing today, Guy?
Well, it's March 13th, 2015.
March 19th.
Whatever. Got Jack, the boy, and his friend Noah here, and they're going to come with us on the maiden voyage. It's the first time we've actually hooked up to this boat. And so it fit on the ball, which is good, and it hasn't fallen off the ball, which is good. And we're going to see how hot our bearings are. But we're going to go take this little boat for a little cruise, and hopefully it floats, and hopefully it runs, and you'll check us out later.
I was happy the boat floated and the crank worked for the tongue and the wheels. You never know on a thing like this. Anything could go wrong at any time.
Have somebody on shore until we know this is good.
Alright, guy. The motor's running. We can barely hear it, but it is running.
That is amazing. They said the P stream on the water coming out is louder than the motor, and they're right.
Hey, guy, how fast are we going?
We're going 6.2 right now.
And what's our RPMs at?
2600.
2600? That's not bad. Good fuel economy at that pace, I believe. Oh. Take a look at how she looks up front. We're going to want a little splashboard up front here, there's no doubt. We're at 7.5 miles an hour.
How's it look back there? Well, I'm just saying how much weight, because we're going to have fuel and our supplies. So when we have weight like you guys, that represents our supplies.
Wow, we use these objects. We're just
I mean, that's pretty, what's that, a couple hundred pounds there between the two of them.
I bet.
The motor ran well, but we just couldn't get the speed we needed. We knew we were going to need new pontoons for the boat, but where would we find them? We remembered our friend Mark Allman had a pontoon boat. We could switch him out. He'll never notice. Hey, look, close to the same. Only about 3 feet difference in length and a few hundred pounds in weight. It'll be perfect. Switching the pontoons out was not near as easy as I thought it would be. The boat holes did not line up, so there was a lot of drilling and holding and moving and drilling. It just went on and on, but we did get it done.
You and Wayne got the tunes switched in record time. I'm very impressed. I'm really excited to see how this boat's going to run. Hopefully it runs fast and flat and really buoyant and ready to set sail for the old Big Mo. Well, we're toying with the motor up and down, the whole, whatever you call that whole unit that lifts up the whole motor, not just the trim and tilt. Toying with that, but we need a different transom on there, huh?
That's what I'm thinking. A new transom, that'll give us a little extra back buoyancy too. Okay, I'm here with Brad Heckenleibel of Rube's Welding. He did some work on this awesome boat. Brad, could you tell us what you did here?
We extended the tongue, put a new coupler on it, because you guys put on the new pontoons and it was a little bit close to the truck. We put these on so you could actually stick your pontoons out further so it's easier access to your tires. We stuck a real motor pod on it so you didn't have near as much drag on your motor, braced it all in, put a brace underneath to hold everything. Your motor should be on there for good now. That's really about it. That's all we did.
Perfect, thank you.
You bet.
After Brad put the transom on and made the other alterations, the next test we made felt like we were taking out a new boat. Back it in the water, crank up the hitch and the wheels. Everything looks good. I think we're ready to go. The new transom looks good in the water. The motor seems to work good. I think we're ready to set sail. Our friends Lyle Shaw, Adam Sharkey, and Andrea Sharkey took their first ride on the boat.
I don't know yet. Probably the one that gets us the best fuel mileage and gets us down the river at a medium to comfortable pace.
Mitch figured out a way to mount some lights. They were even way brighter than I thought they'd be. He did do some shopping at a neighborhood garage sale and scored big with a $10 toilet and a free futon.
Well, we tested out the SS Mark Ullman motorboat. It's a 10 horsepower.
I told him we ordered it online, so it's not Mark Ullman. I just talked to him today.
Okay, good. Forget anything about Mark Ullman, but we put a 10 horse Honda on here, and has a little back.
We bought it online.
In reserve, yeah, the one we bought online.
There we go.
And it looks just like the one Ullman had,
But totally different.
but totally runs way better, probably. And it's got this stick.
We knew we'd have to be protected from the sun, being out there all day. We constructed a platform / canopy out of 2x4s and plywood. It ended up going up really easy and was very beneficial to our trip. We figured out how we could steer our little 10-horse motor. All we would need is about 100 feet of cable, some pulleys, and, well, a good shovel handle. Yeah, a little unconventional, but it worked great. Mitch's kids even got to help out a little bit. And then we talked Scott Baker into going for a ride. He was a professional boat mechanic and a local celebrity.
All right, Guy, what's going on right now?
Test run, a little Honda Hummer. It's actually a 10 horse, but we got it rigged up to steering up there, the shovel handle. Yeah, 4-man deal, we like it.
It's the most impressive steering system I've seen in my 20 years of boat mechanicking.
He knows a good steering system and a thrifty steering system when he sees it, I bet. When we're going down up the Missouri, this thing can propel us probably just as easy and at the same speed as our big one, but more efficiently, more safely in case we hit a rock. This one's got some give.
We got a little tinging. Try to pull that out again and see if that takes care of that tinging again. Maybe we just need to have a little thing to hold it out a little bit.
He says it's just due to the string.
Put more wrap on the tension.
It was kind of a nightmare when we took that thing apart on that tensioner.
That would explain the
real
stinging.
interested in doing another wrap.
You know what? I backed that throttle off just a little bit, and it didn't really.
Affect our mileage?
No.
Or I mean our miles per hour?
Yeah.
Very good to know. Very good to know.
Are you sure that's not inches per hour?
It was fun to finally take both of our families out. I think they were nervously impressed. The boat handled good with a bunch of people on it, too.
Well, the lights look good.
Oh yeah. We don't mess around, do we, Ferris?
Not much. Just a little bit.
People don't realize that we don't mess around.
That's all you guys do.
Brooklyn, who are you scared of?
I'm scared of her too.
He's scared of you.
My parents even got to experience a small rain shower. Good thing we had the tarp up. My mother asked me a couple weeks before this if I was still going to do that river trip thing. Yeah, Mom, I've been planning it for a year. She always worries about her little boy. I think my dad wishes he could come along. Our boat was coming together. Our banner/wave break was done. Thanks again, Jerome Beveridge. And special thanks to Mark Ullman. We needed to load our pontoon boat on a flatbed trailer. We knew the little wheels under the boat would not make the 662-mile trip all the way to Three Forks, Montana. That proved harder than we first thought. The pontoons we replaced the old ones with were longer and bigger, and that made winching it onto our trailer impossible. It was crunch time as we were trying to get out of town and stay on schedule. We raced to the boat ramp to try to float our boat onto the flatbed. That wasn't working. Luckily, Danny Downs of Downs Marina Pier told us we could use his boat lift. We hadn't expected to see our boat hoisted some 15 feet in the air, but it worked perfect. We were now loaded and ready to hit the road. Well, almost. A couple more stops, and then say goodbye to my wife. Finally, 3 p.m., but on the road. Tons of blood, sweat, and tears to get to this point, but we were doing it. About 3 hours later, in Belfouche, South Dakota, a nice couple waved us to pull over. To our surprise, they were holding one of our big 12-gallon fuel tanks. They said it blew out, and luckily missed several cars. So nice of them. Not only did we need it, but that's over $100 to replace. Not far without more excitement. Hail no! Hail yes.
Little hail. I'd be realistically, that's it.
The only hope.
I think it light up a little bit.
What's your thoughts, Clark?
I think you're all nuts. That's just my opinion.
We take your opinions very seriously, Clark.
Trudge on, my young fellas. Trudge on.
The hail didn't want to quit. Once we thought it was over, another barrage hit us, and then hit us again. The hail was loud enough to hurt my ears. My truck was left with a few more dings in it, but overall, the boat was fine, and that was our main concern. We didn't want our trip to be over too soon. The roads cleared up and led us to our friend's ranch for the night. Pat and Erica Hayes have a beautiful place outside Boerne, Montana. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but you can see it from there. Clark had never been there before. He was surprised and impressed. Once you leave the main gravel road, it's a 7-mile bumpy trail to their house. But oh, so worth it. To see our friends, catch up on old times, and share with them our plan of attack on the Missouri. We were greeted with a big meal and a soft chair to sleep in. The next morning we threw on our fake mustaches and hit the trail, but not before a little sightseeing. Pat's Bridge is also famous in the area. It crosses the Tongue River. It is also a favorite place for locals and several Shakespeare actors to visit on hot summer days. The bridge sits over a deep hole and will cool you down in a hurry after a fun jump in. Pat even had a diving board on there for several years. What a fun place.
always put my hand out the window, but when I do, I make a dolphin.
Welcome to Missouri Headwaters State Park, is what the sign said. We had finally made it. We read many interpretive signs and found our way to the boat ramp.
In 1920, local residents sought to acknowledge this special place. Clark Maudlin donated the park's first 9 acres. The state purchased an additional 21 acres, and the park was officially dedicated in 1951 with the following words: "To forever commemorate the epic journey of Captains Meriwether Lewis and William Clark and their band of intrepid explorers to locate the headwaters of the Missouri River, the Headwaters State Park has been established at the confluence of the 3 rivers. This embraces an area every foot of which could tell a story of heroism and incredible hardships.
Nature intended me for the tranquil pursuits of science by rendering them my supreme delight." Thomas Jefferson.
Missouri Headwaters retains a vital, rich environment that draws an abundance of plant and animal species, which have attracted people to this area for centuries.
After posing for several pictures and quickly educating ourselves on the area, it was time to head to town and celebrate our much anticipated arrival and plan for Friday's big launch. We got checked into our hotel and took a drive around town. The city of Three Forks is named so because it lies near where the Madison, Jefferson, and the Gallatin rivers all converge to form the Missouri River. With a population of around 2,000 people, Three Forks is quiet, clean, and the people are all super nice.
I could hardly sleep the night before. I was filled with nervous anticipation on what was going to happen. I kept thinking to myself, is there any way we will be able to actually do this?
Friday, June 19th, 2015. By 10 a.m. we had our boat off the trailer and in one piece. Next we had to assemble our roof and load all the supplies. We then hooked up the pickup to the boat and headed for a gas station. After our tanks were full, it was about a 10-minute drive to the boat ramp.
Considering it an essential point in the geography of the western part of the continent, Meriwether Lewis wrote the country opens suddenly to extensive and beautiful plains and meadows, which appear to be surrounded in every direction with distant and lofty mountains.
As we pulled up to the boat launch area, it all got very real. Excitement and nervousness, all at once. Well, here we go. This is it. We put the boat in the water and waved bye-bye. Actually, not really. We made arrangements for Clark to take the truck 26 miles downstream to the first portage, Tungsten Dam. We figured this would be good insurance in case something went wrong, or we found out we were in way over our heads.
The prop on that little motor sure took a beating with all the rocks.
About a quarter mile from the boat ramp, we started to think that might be the case. Shortly after our departure, we were hung up in shallow, rocky ground. We didn't expect that. 5 minutes later, we were hung up again and spun around facing upstream. Okay, this isn't what we expected. Maybe we were in way over our heads.
Here we are. It's been a long process, but boy, it's been fun. We're really doing it. I'm steering this boat a lot more than I thought I would, but the motor's running good. We have a lot of stuff.
Yes, we do.
We then learned quickly how to, or tried to, read the river and how it flowed, constantly looking for the deepest channel to travel in.
Guy was a much quicker study on reading the river. It seemed every time I took the helm, we were hung up. We had several decisions on whether to go left or right around islands, and then guess what the river looked like on the other side of the islands.
Little motor's running good. We have been hung up a couple times, but we figured it out. Mitch is back there getting our steering, one of our steering bolts came out.
The vibrations of the little motor kept loosening the nuts on the steering system. We eventually had to resort to using zip ties to hold it all together. They did work better, but would break under the pressure, so it was something we had to constantly watch out for. There is no question the river parts of the trip, meaning where the water is free-flowing and not backed up by a dam, would be much easier to navigate in a canoe or kayak. This was a consideration during the planning of the trip, but there was no way we had 2 months that it would take to make the trip this way. Several people do kayak the entire Missouri River every summer. They even start further upstream than we did, usually on the Jefferson up to the absolute source of the water. This would be an awesome experience, but I have no idea how I could convince my family I would be gone for 2 months. On the river areas of the trip, a good share of it was in under 2 feet of water. Staring at the depth finder kind of drove a person nuts. It would go from 1 foot to 3 feet to a half a foot, and you really didn't know which way to go because the river really wasn't telling you anything. When you came around a bend, you had the decision of going left or right. At this point, we decided left going into this stretch because the right side was impossible to pass, or so we thought. And as we're cruising along, we're really not sure what to do, even which side of the bank we should be on. It is so hard to judge this and know if we're making a right decision or a wrong decision. I was at the helm during this, so there was a good chance a bad decision was going to be made, but Guy would have to help me out and push the boat out when I get hung up. And now as we come along, we know we're going to have to choose which side to exit this into the main flow of the river. The first several hours of the trip, we're making these decisions. As we come up on an island, you could go either way. Sometimes there'd be 2 islands, so we'd have 3 choices, left, right, or middle. And we'd almost flip a coin on deciding which way to go. And, well, we were wrong a lot of times, but we were right a few times also.
The legendary Sacagawea was captured here as a child and eventually returned as a member of the Corps of Discovery. Another member of this expedition, John Coulter, later made several trips to the area in search of furs and began his famous run nearby. Pioneer settlers settled the surrounding area and transformed it into profitable grazing and farming land. Missouri Headwaters State Park preserves much of the region's abundant wildlife, lush vegetation, and scenic beauty that have attracted people for thousands of years. The park is 4,045 feet in elevation. Missouri Headwaters area was a geographical focal point important to early Native Americans, trappers, traders, and settlers. Coveting the region's bountiful resources, the Flathead, Bannock, and Shoshone Indians competed for control of the area, as did the trappers and settlers who followed.
If you look close into the river, you can see the rocky bottom. We are in maybe a foot of water at this point, and it's getting narrower and narrower, and I'm really questioning whether I made the right decision a mile upriver by going on this side of the island. And I hope I can make it over, but there's no guarantee until we get there. I better get fairly close to shore. Maybe, well, I kind of see water moving close to shore, so we're going to go close to shore. Here we go. All right, well, we're going to get close. Extremely close. Like 2 feet away close. And it looks like we made it. We made it through it. Looking back, we maybe made the wrong decision on which side we're on, but who knows? And we're still cruising just like that.
Just in the nick of time.
We encountered our first rain shower within 3 hours of being on the boat. Lightning, wind, and heavy rain all at once. Luckily, it didn't last long. Soon we arrived at Tungsten Dam. Clark was there with the truck waiting for us.
The dam is named after the town of Tolston, Montana, which is just 6 miles away. A federal agency gave the state $820,000 to build the dam. The project was the second most expensive hydro effort in the state at the time. The dam was built on a natural ridge of rock which ran perpendicular to the Missouri River.
While he was waiting, he met and visited with some campers. They were surprised to see us and had many, many questions. Directly behind Tungsten Dam, there was not a very good boat ramp, and it looked very rocky. We thought, let's not chance it. We had Clark take us further down a few miles, but every boat ramp had issues. We were in and out of the city of Tungsten several times, talking to people and trying to find a suitable boat ramp. We had to travel several more miles to the beginning of Canyon Ferry Reservoir. There we parted ways with Clark. He headed back to Three Forks to get our flatbed trailer and then start back for South Dakota.
Canyon Ferry Lake is Montana's third largest body of water, 96 shoreline miles. The lake is a popular outdoor destination, providing boating, fishing, wildlife habitat, and is nestled against the Big Belt Mountains of the Rocky Mountains. Canyon Ferry Lake has also become a leading venue for ice boat racing, ice boat world speed record attempts.
Mitch and I drove the boat till about dark. We found a little bay protected from the wind. The shore was strewn with driftwood, perfect for building a fire. While Mitch did a few minor boat repairs, I grabbed a fishing rod. Within minutes I landed a nice 2-pound walleye. He managed to get off the stringer, but the next fish was a 3-pound trout. He was cooked over the fire, and he was delicious. Good thing too, because it was the last fish we caught. Our first night of camping went well. We awoke refreshed and ready for our second day of boating. It was cool and breezy on Canyon Ferry, and the lake seemed even bigger. It's about 25 miles long. When the wind is from the northwest, the waves can get really big. Our friend Jack Cool from Pierce, South Dakota, went down the river on a kayak. He left about a month ahead of us. He said when he hit Canyon Ferry Lake, he spent 2 days on shore, just waiting for the wind to go down.
The time's actually 8:22 in the morning here. Beautiful on Canyon Ferry. Me and Mitch just cruising along.
White City was a small mining settlement in the Big Belt Mountains, 13 miles east of present-day Canyon Ferry Dam. By 1865, gold was being recovered from the numerous stream bottoms in the gulches east of the Missouri River, and was also being found in gravel bars along the river, most abundantly at French Bar, located 1.25 miles below the present dam.
Cemetery Island. This island really is a cemetery. The island was formed when the dam was built in 1954. The town the cemetery served, Canton, is now under the water of the lake.
It was a cool and choppy ride to the dam. Our first stop was a little bait shop and boat slip area. We got the feeling we weren't quite fancy enough to be hanging out there. We moseyed to the other side of the dam and found a major boat ramp and hung out there for about an hour trying to find a person to give supportage. After our wait there and not finding anybody to visit with, we traveled east, and there we spotted a fellow traveler. A beached kayak with plenty of supplies strapped to it. We pulled up and met Ellen McDonough. She was headed to St. Louis. We took a few pictures and exchanged info. We did see a fellow about our age camped out and cooking breakfast. We parked the boat, walked up and introduced ourselves. He said he would gladly help us out after he fed his kids. Soon Mitch and I found ourselves in the back of his pickup, getting a ride for us and pulling our boat around the dam.
Canyon Ferry Dam is a concrete gravity dam in a narrow valley where the Big Belt Mountains and the Spokane Hills merge, approximately 68 miles downstream Three Forks. The dam is for flood control, irrigation, recreation, and hydroelectric power.
As crazy as it seems, this voyage was more stressful than most would imagine. We were always trying to think and act with 2 or 3 steps ahead of us in mind. Keeping our boat running seemed to be the number one priority. We were always worried about possible damage to our boat. If a pontoon was damaged or a motor was made inoperable, then we were either out of business or significantly delayed. Traveling on the smaller dams was probably the most relaxing. If the wind were to come up on Hauser or Holter, we would not be too affected. We would still be able to make some miles. Those dams offered many other boaters. With people in sight, we felt secure that if a mishap were to happen, it would be easy to flag someone down and get some assistance or a pull to the ramp.
York Bridge, named after an African-American slave, best known for his participation with the Lewis and Clark expedition. Enslaved by William Clark, he performed hard manual labor without pay, but participated as a full member of the expedition. Hauser Dam is a hydroelectric straight gravity dam on the Missouri River about 14 miles northeast of Helena, Montana. The original dam, built between 1905 and 1907, failed in 1908 and caused severe flooding and damage downstream. A second dam was built on the site in 1908 and opened in 1911 and comprises the present structure. The current Hauser Dam is 700 feet long and 80 feet high.
Luckily for us, my in-laws Don and Zell Derryberry happened to be at a church conference in Helena, Montana. They knew we would be approaching Holter Dam on or around June 20th, and they said they would like to see us if possible. Mitch and I were always worried about time and timing. We knew 2 weeks would go fast, and we had a long way to go. Having Don and Zell there to portage us would save a great deal of headache. Don and Zell's conference getting done early not only saved us from having to find a good portager, but we learned it wasn't a short, simple trip around the dam. We had to drive about 5 miles out to the interstate, and then down the interstate at about 35 miles an hour for another 5 miles, hoping not to get rear-ended. While near the interstate, we were able to get some fuel and some junk food at a convenience store.
This evening we entered much of the most remarkable cliffs that we have yet seen. These cliffs rise from the water's edge on either side perpendicularly to the height of 1,200 feet. Every object here wears a dark and gloomy aspect. The towering and projecting rocks in many places seem ready to tumble on us. The river appears to have forced its way through this immense body of solid rock, wrote Meriwether Lewis.
Oh, you're on video. Here we are at, this is Holter Lake?
Yes.
And this is the gates of the Missouri. The gates to the mountain.
Beautiful.
Yes. And the perfect day. At the gates, Mitch. Isn't this fun?
Oh yeah.
May 20th. Birthday, Dad. Wish you were here. Really cool.
In 1918, when Holter Dam was built, forming Holter Lake, the water level of the Missouri River in the gates was raised approximately 14 feet.
This is amazing. A must-see in life. Everybody is so friendly. Saturday, 20th of June. You can see a little cave, cavern, and you can see like little loops. The people in front of us are going to point us out. We met them at the dock, and they're going to point us out where there's some carvings up here on the wall that are really old.
The prominent gray cliffs along the Missouri River in the gates of the mountains are formed by Madison limestone. Within the canyon, caves and folded layers of Madison limestone are found. Near the north end of the canyon, at Man Gulch, and further north, alternating ridges and valleys reflect alternating resistance of younger rock layers overlying the Madison limestone. The entire canyon is an example of a superposed or antecedent stream in which the river predates the uplift of the rocks and kept pace with erosion as uplift occurred.
Native American pictographs dating back over 1,200 years. That is over 1,000 years before the Corps of Discovery entered this area. The Man Gulch Fire reported on August 5th, 1949. A team of 15 smoke jumpers parachuted into the area on that afternoon to fight the fire, rendezvousing with a former smoke jumper who was employed as a fire guard at a nearby campground. As the team approached the fire and began fighting it, unexpected high winds caused the fire to suddenly expand, cutting off the men's route and forcing them back uphill. During the next few minutes, a blow-up of the fire covered 3,000 acres in 10 minutes, claiming the lives of 13 firefighters. The fire would continue for 5 more days before being controlled. The United States Forest Service drew lessons from the tragedy of the Man Gulch Fire by designing new training techniques and safety measures that develop how the agency approached wildfire suppression. The agency also increased emphasis on research and the science of fire behavior. Norman McLean researched the fire and its behavior for his book, Young Men and Fire. McLean, who worked in northwestern Montana in logging camps for the Forest Service in his youth, recounted the events of the fire and the ensuing tragedy and undertook a detailed investigation of the fire's causes. McLean's most famous book, A River Runs Through It, was also based in Montana. Indian Village is a group of 50 or 60 houses with no roads. The only access to this village is by water. I am fairly sure most of the building materials used were brought in over the ice during the winter months. The village has a small restaurant where the locals and boaters gather. Here we met Tony Montoya, who was our next portage. We started out ahead of him towards the dam, but he assured us that he would meet us there.
Holter Dam is a hydroelectric straight-gravity dam which was built between 1908 and 1918, is 1,364 feet long and 124 feet high.
Tony did do an excellent job portaging us. He was very careful with all of his moves. We did forget our dingo flag in the back of his pickup, so if anyone knows him, find out, please, if he still has the flag. I made a terrible mistake while underhooking the boat at the ramp, and thank goodness Guy is patient because he could have been seriously injured by my mistake.
It's on video. Hey, Mitch, we're on video. Anyway, yeah, we just got hung up a little bit.
In a situation.
Yeah.
And the sun's, we're burning daylight. We burnt all the daylight.
So we figured we'd stay here. We got a tree to, we got a ratchet strap too. Nice night for an evening.
We don't need to tell anyone about this until we get home.
Yeah, might scare people.
Yeah, our parents would not appreciate what we're doing right now.
Between Craig and Cascade, Montana, the scenery was, again, incredible. The steeper canyon walls and mountainous terrain really gave it a Montana feel. There we saw many fly fishermen in river boats fishing for trout. Even lucky enough to see a lady catch one.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think this video is going to really do this justice.
I don't think any video.
Because we're at 6 feet right now.
Unless we were.
As you can see from many of our pictures and videos, we're usually wearing warm clothes. For the end of June, I spent a lot of time with a stocking cap on. Packing heavier clothes was first thought of as silly, but we're so glad we had them. Here we are by Cascade, Montana. The river's pretty wide, or pretty deep here. Just rolling along about 5.5 right now. That's what we're going on. We're all good. Hi. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Love you guys. Bye. That stretch was narrow, rocky, and faster. We were often just a few inches from big boulders, and yes, even bounced off of a few. Not what we were expecting, but it kept us on our toes, and never bored. Every turn of the river gave us another spectacular view, whether it be a canyon wall, a fisherman, or the backyard of a lucky person's residence.
July 22nd, 1805. Sacagawea recognizes the country and assures us that this is the river on which her relations live, and the Three Forks are no great distance. Late this evening we arrived at Captain Clark's camp. We took them on board with the meat they had collected and proceeded a short distance and encamped on an island. Although Captain Clark was much fatigued, his feet yet blistered and sore, he insisted on pursuing his route in the morning. Captain Lewis.
We even spotted the majestic Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, a whole herd of them just standing on the railroad tracks, just as inquisitive of us as we were of them. We got hung up, again, in the middle of the river. We took this time to do a few things to our boat. There, a fisherman in a riverboat paddled over to us. He asked us, "What the heck are you boys doing?" After we told him our story, he said, "Did you know right around the next bend is Half-Breed Rapids?" No, I guess we didn't. Are Half-Breed Rapids bad?" "Well, let me tell you, I was a riverboat captain in Alaska for 11 years, and I wouldn't try taking that boat through it." "Mitchell, that sounds like a problem for us." Then he says, "There's a boat ramp upriver about a half mile. If your boat has wheels under it, you can go back and pull it around the rapids." So we tried to go upstream back to the boat ramp, but the river was too shallow and the current was too fast. Our prop kept hitting the rocky bottom, and we knew we would only end up damaging something. After much conversation and weighing out all of our options, we decided together that it's go time. We now started to prepare for a possible crash. We got our life jackets on, secured all loose objects, and put any real valuables into waterproof containers. We could see the white water and big boulders peering out at us. We raised our motor as we entered the abyss. I yelled out, "You don't yell whoa in a bog hole!" And Mitch screamed something in Spanish.
Wish we'd had all that on tape, huh?
We're living. We're busy living.
Oh, man.
Now. Oh, that was more than class on what happened.
Oh, you knew the whole story there, folks.
That was absolutely insane.
You wouldn't have wanted to.
That was an intense moment we just went through.
This one was.
Oh boy.
Dodging damage and capsation, we somehow slid right through the gnarly rapids. I did see some people on shore fishing. They looked over and pointed, as to say to each other, "Look at those fools. I can't believe they went through that." And they made it. Just as we seemed we were out and all havoc was over, we realized that was just round one. More rapids laid ahead. But good for us, they were not nearly as rough or scary as the first set of rapids. Once things slowed down is when we got our cameras out, wishing we could have had them on the whole time. Wow, glad that's over. We did see our riverboat buddy downriver a few miles. We pulled up and laughed and said, "Those weren't so bad."
We just got hung up. We got out about 3 hours somewhere south of home. Hope we're a little closer to home than we think, but we're not sure. This is day 3, correct? Sunday, day 3, Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, Dad.
I proceeded on in a path, saw several Indian camps, which they left for the spring. Saw a gang of elk, as we had no provision, concluded to kill some. Killed 2 and dined, being obliged to substitute dry buffalo dung in place of wood. My feet is very much bruised and cut walking over the flint and constantly stuck full prickly pear thorns. I pulled out 17 by the light of the fire tonight. Mosquitoes very troublesome. Clark, July 19th, 1805.
Great Falls is a city in and the county seat of Cascade County, Montana, with a population of about 60,000. Great Falls takes its name from the series of 5 waterfalls in close proximity along the upper Missouri River basin that the Lewis and Clark expedition had to portage around over a 10-mile stretch. The effort required 31 days of arduous labor.
As we neared Great Falls, we were contacted by Kristen Cates. Kristen is a reporter for the Great Falls Tribune and wanted to do a story on us. She said she would also put us in touch with an old boy named Jim Mead. He loved helping people portage around the dams. Jim Mead said he had helped portage many canoes and kayaks over the years, but never a pontoon boat.
Fort Benton is known as the birthplace of Montana. Fort Benton is situated on the banks of the Missouri River and is a haven for history buffs, as well as canoeists seeking the solitude and unique beauty of the upper Missouri National Wild and Scenic River.
During a brief separation of the 2 leaders, Captain Clark and the expedition's main party camped near here on June 12, 1805. Captain Lewis, in an effort to locate landmarks the Hadassahs told him about, led a small advance group in search of the Great Falls of the Missouri, which would validate the correct route. The Corps camped here on June 11, 1805. The Teton River is higher here than the Missouri, thus allowing water to run through the underground gravels and bubble up to form Grog Springs. The spring water was used by Captain Lewis to mix a potion of boiled chokecherry bark, which he drank to cure his stomach troubles.
Anyway, it's a beautiful morning here.
The expedition stayed at this site for 10 days, trying to determine which river would lead to the Northwest Passage.
That's Mitch on the boat, sleeping. Let's go wake him up.
The entire crew felt the right fork, the Marias, was the true Missouri River. However, after further exploration, the two captains determined the South Fork, the Missouri, was the correct route. Once this decision had been made, Lewis decided to name the right fork Maria's River, after his cousin Maria Wood.
We overtook 2 small fishing boats, each with a husband and wife, on a 3-day river camping trip. They were actually driving one boat while the other boat was being towed. That enabled the other couple to sit back and read a book and not burn any fuel either. We encountered 2 ferry boats on our trip. The first took us by surprise. We lowered our flag so as the cables were not to hit it. Thinking we had passed safely by, we started to get cameras out when Mitch noticed a 3rd cable, even lower than the first 2. Mitch heroically jumped up and lifted the cable up and over the hitch, just in time.
How was that?
Oh boy. That was freaking, that's what I was, the whole thing on there says low.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out. I didn't think it'd be that low. You pushed up on it.
I had to, it was going to wreck us. It was eye level for me and I got it over the top of me. And I was scared on how thick and heavy it was going to be, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't want my head, so I ducked down and...
Oh, hey, look over there. A sign that says, "Caution, low cable."
Prior to the construction of major dams on the Missouri River, spring floods would reform river channels and create new islands and gravel bars. The big floods of 1908, 1953, and 1964 left lasting legacies and transformed stream sides and riparian vegetation. The floods bank building action created cottonwood seed beds sufficiently high above the river that winter ice jams would not slice off the young seedlings in the subsequent years. The condition of riparian vegetation is a vital concern to managers and visitors to the Upper Missouri, since it provides habitat for wildlife, regulates ecological function, and provides beauty and shade to visitors. During the steamboat era, after the Civil War, woodhawkers sold cords of wood along the river to steamboat captains to fuel their boilers. Although a significant proportion of cottonwood was cut for the steamboats, much of the floodplain had recovered its potential to grow cottonwood by the mid-1900s. Recent flood control measures, however, have severely limited opportunities for cottonwood regeneration, and young replacement stands of cottonwoods are relatively rare. The Upper Missouri contains diverse sets of rock types with a wide range of ages. The river itself carries a high sediment load from the erosion of soft sedimentary rocks, while the rocky channel bed contains more erosion-resistant sandstone and other more resistant rocks originating from sources upstream. Dark, igneous formations loom unexpectedly after being exposed through years of erosion. On May 31st, 1805, Lewis and Clark stayed at one of the most beautiful campsites of their journey west. Vivid descriptions of white cliffs of the Missouri are found in their journal. Citadel Rock is a National Historic Landmark. The Citadel is one of the most prominent natural features on the Upper Missouri. It is an impressive dark, igneous rock at the river's edge. Citadel Rock has been featured in some of the most famous historical paintings of the Upper Missouri.
The hills and river cliffs which we passed today exhibit a most romantic appearance. The bluffs of the river rise to the height of 200 to 300 feet, and in most places near perpendicular. They are formed of remarkable white sandstone which is sufficiently soft to give way readily to the impression of water. Captain Lewis.
The Valley of the Upper Missouri is a living museum, the product of many events over time. The land was originally laid down in horizontal layers, the sediments and shorelines of great inland sea that once covered most of the Great Plains. These layers have since been folded, faulted, uplifted, and modified by volcano activity, and sculpted by glaciers, erosion, and then added to the terrain seen along the river, today known as a landform called the Breaks, a term thought to have been coined by F.V. Hayden during the initial geological survey of this area in the 1850s.
In this stretch, the hills had many rock formations that resembled old walls that had dirt blown in around them.
Deadman Rapids during the early steamboat years. This was commonly referred to as Drowned Man Rapid. It has been theorized that the name's origin evolved when a canoe capsized in 1837, drowning all 4 crewmen aboard.
When noticing our second ferry up ahead, we killed the motor and drifted towards it, much slower and more aware of any possible low-hanging cables. We continued drifting for several miles, enjoying the silence and quickly watching the light fade away and darkness set in. Thinking we could find a suitable spot about anywhere to tie up for the night, we got a little too relaxed. Just then, bang! While drifting sideways, we hit a big rock. The first pontoon went over it, while the second one got caught. All of a sudden, the quietness was gone, and nothing but loud roars of water rushing around our vessel. We were hung up good. We worked on it for about 20 minutes, in the dark, before finally getting freed. But that didn't last long. While trying to motor to shore, using just a spotlight, we were in the rocks again, and with the sounds of rapids downstream from us. Not to mention, there's lightning in the sky now too. I will admit there was a moment that Tuesday night where I was wishing I was at my weekly poker game and not stuck on a boat in the middle of a fast-moving river in the dark with a storm coming. Mitch summoned the courage and got in the water to push us free, while I controlled the motor and throttle. With one lucky shot, we threaded the needle and got our boat to shore. After hitting shore, I kept the throttle on so we could hold our position while Mitch jumped out to secure us to something. It took us 2 trips to get all of our camping equipment up and around to a safe camping area. The way the sky was lighting up, we figured we were in for a good storm. We did not get laid down that night until midnight, and we slept good after a long day. We awoke to find a beautiful morning. The storm must have gone around us. We were surprised to see we had parked our boat in the rapids. That's why it was so loud and chaotic the night before.
On May 27, 1805, Clark wrote, This day is very warm. We only saw a few small herds of the bighorn animals on the hills, and 2 elk, one of which we killed. We camped at 2 dead top trees on the Lard side.
Well, it's Wednesday, about 11. We've been gone about a week. Been on the river about
Dauphin Rapids. The rapids are named for Louis Dauphin, a famous Western hunter and guide who fell into the river here while accompanying Prince Maximilian of Wied and artist Karl Bodmer on their epic western journey in 1833 to 34. In their present state, the rapids look unimposing compared to the major obstacle of navigation they presented in the steamboat era. Ship's logs from that period recount innumerable incidents of failure in passing these rapids. Tow ropes and strong backs were often the only means of forward progress. A number of boats operated above the rapids for the sole purpose of relaying cargo from those that ended their voyage at this natural barrier. The wildlife species within the upper Missouri River breaks are diverse, abundant, and widespread. Of the species known to occur in the area before Euro-American settlement, only the grizzly bear, wolf, and bison no longer inhabit the region. The variety of vegetation along the river and its associated areas provides habitat for the diverse wildlife population. More than 60 mammals, 233 species of birds, and 20 species of amphibians inhabit these areas. The river itself is home to 48 species of fish, ranging from the half-ounce minnow to the 140-pound paddlefish.
When my in-laws' plans to go camping in Wyoming fell through, we decided to go the opposite direction and meet us at the James Kipp campground near the Fred Robinson Bridge in Montana. They were waiting on the bridge as we boated down. They even had a sign up to welcome us. It was so nice to see them again so soon. Don drove us to the top of a hill so we could get cell reception, while Zell made us a delicious meal. It had been several days since hearing from home, and our voicemail box was very full. After sleeping on our boat in the campground by their trailer, we decided to have Don and Zell portage us from there to the beginning of Fort Peck. This wasn't part of our plan, but many things influenced it at that moment. First, dealing with low waters, we were afraid of getting hung up where the river dumped into Fort Peck. Second, we had a good weather window report to get us across the reservoir. With its size, the weather there could stop us easily. Third, we wanted to make it home by July 3rd, and at the rate we were going, we were behind schedule. Don and Zell gave us a pull to the Crooked Creek boat ramp on Fort Peck Reservoir. We hadn't boated very long on Fort Peck when we came up on two fishermen in a boat. They waved us over and said, "Read about you in the paper." Several hours later, we had to take shelter in a bay to hide from the wind. I took that time to crawl up a hill to try to get phone reception. There I nearly stepped on two rattlesnakes.
Although one of the most plentiful species of game on the prairie, Lewis and Clark preferred almost any other to the pronghorn antelope. While at this site, Captain Lewis stated, "We caught 2 antelopes at our encampment in attempting to swim the river. These animals are but lean as yet, and of course not very pleasant food."
About dark, we found the Bone Trail boat ramp. We tied up to the dock for the night. Mitch grilled some brats while visiting with fishermen coming in for the night. I made my bed on the boat, while Mitch slept on a cot right on the boat dock. Mitch nearly fell in the water the next morning at 5:30 a.m. when a boat motor started up right beside him. Just chugging along Fort Peck, a fancy fishing boat circled us. As we stopped, a fellow yelled out, "Is that Guy Ferris?" I said, "That depends." He said, "It's John Daly from Fort Thompson." John Daly was the last person I expected to see way up there. As we approached the face of the dam at Fort Peck Reservoir, we stopped and jumped in. We figured we were both due for a bath. We found a marina on the east side. There we had a big cheeseburger and visited with some locals. The barmaid said her husband, who worked in the bait shop, could give us a pull around the dam. He got us there by about 6:30 p.m. We signed a few autographs and we're back on the water.
Captain Lewis documents that the buffalo are in such great numbers that the men throw sticks and stones at them in order to drive them out of the way. Lewis also describes one of his favorite dishes, boudin blanc, made from buffalo's guts and intestines.
Here we are below Fort Peck. About to hit our first little set of rapids. Hold on.
The Missouri River in Montana was very shallow and rocky, and it was very hard on our little propeller. We went through many shear bolts and ended up having to break heads off of screws and use those. From Fort Peck to Williston, we encountered many small rapids and lots of sunken trees to try to avoid.
The Fort Peck Dam is the first of 6 major dams along the Missouri River, located near Glasgow, Montana. At 21,026 feet in length and over 250 feet in height, it creates Fort Peck Lake, the 5th largest man-made lake in the U.S. More than 130 miles long, 200 feet deep, and it has a 1,520-mile shoreline, which is longer than the state of California's coastline. The dam presently has a nameplate capacity of 185.25 megawatts, divided among 5 generating units. The lake level fluctuates over time based on a number of factors.
Nowhere along the entire Lewis and Clark journey was the game more plentiful than throughout what is now known as northeast Montana.
The river again was very slow going. We found ourselves hung up and replacing shear pins on our little motor way too often. At night, the mosquitoes started getting very bad.
Above the Milk River, they noted we can send out at any time and obtain whatever species of meat the country offered, in as large a quantity as we wished.
Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday. Doing something. We're getting close to Wolf Point. Only been hung up a couple times today. Mitch is doing a hell of a job at the helm.
As soon as you say that, I'm going to hit something.
After looking at weather reports and doing math on mileage, we again got worried about being able to make it home on time. That's when we called our friend Gary Knutson.
Remember, Mitch, we're like barbers. The hairier the better.
She's pretty hairy, man.
On May 8, 1805, Lewis and Clark named this river, as it is known today. Captain Lewis writes, "We nooned at just above the entrance of a large river. The water of this river possesses a peculiar whiteness."
He gave us a portage somewhere east of Wolf Point to Williston. We hated not to be able to do that stretch now, but we also did not want to be held up for a day or two on the shores of Sakakawea. We made it to Tobacco Gardens on Lake Sakakawea by sundown, Saturday, June 27th. There we got to hang out with Gary's son, Brad Knutson. We got to meet lots of Brad's friends and even enjoy some karaoke. The next morning we headed out early and had planned on driving all night, but near sundown we had engine troubles.
After we got going on Lake Sakakawea, the smoke from Canadian fires really limited our visibility for taking pictures. There was a haze covering the entire lake.
We worked well past dark trying to get it running. We figured we got water in the fuel filter. It would have been a perfect night too. No wind and a big body of water. Not much chance of hitting anything there. Sure how, but the next morning we got the motor running fine. While driving towards the face of the dam at Garrison, we called around and found a boat shop where we could get a new fuel filter. The fellow also gave me a number for Jim somebody who used to own that shop. He said Jim could portage us. I used the clean, clear waters of Lake Sakakawea to do some laundry. I tied my clothes together with a rope and dragged them behind the boat. We bathed ourselves by going for another swim. Once we approached the boat ramp, Jim was there waiting for us. As Jim was pulling us across the dam, we stopped at the only convenience store in the area. There we noticed the bearing on our boat trailer was smoking very bad. We stopped at Jim's former business, the Bayside Marina, to get a fuel filter. We packed our bearing full of grease and drove about 10 miles an hour down to the river, just hoping we would make it. Once we got back into the water, we were very relieved. We knew our next stop was Pierre, South Dakota. We could worry about the bearing then. Now let me give Jim credit. He did tell us, now remember boys, the Corps of Engineers turns the water on at 8 a.m. and they turn it off at 8 p.m. So the water levels can fluctuate quite significantly. Yeah, thanks for the ride, Jim. Bye-bye.
I don't know if you can see how crystal clear this water is, but it's like looking at an aquarium. Hey everyone, we are down below Garrison Dam, about probably 6 miles. The water is so clear here. It's a beautiful night. Hey everyone, miss you. Talk to you soon.
We were so excited to have made it over the Garrison Dam, the last dam of our trip. The water was clear, the weather was good, and the current was fast. We made it a good 25-30 miles before we found the perfect place to park for the night. A little bay and a big tree to tie onto. Perfect place to camp. What a great day. We really made some good progress. But boy, it was a muggy night, and the mosquitoes were relentless. Always find a way to get through to you.
Last day of June. Mitch is untying the boat. Untying the boat, Mitch?
Yep. I think we got it tied up good last night.
I think so too. Guess the river went down quite a bit.
What a long day that was. Waiting and waiting. I went for a couple hikes and did lots of fishing. Didn't even have one bite. We also tried to hide from many little showers that passed by. I spent so much time on shore, I got land sickness. By 5 p.m. that evening, the water was finally high enough. We used big sticks to help push us off as soon as possible. We were so relieved.
Guy's family was planning to come visit us and celebrate Guy's birthday. With our hang-up in the morning, they had to drive a little further to find us, but it all worked out. The next morning, Jack and Abby decided to come along with us to see what this river trip entailed. They rode with us for 4 or 5 miles, and we only got hung up 3 times in that stretch. I was a little disappointed that they didn't want to get out and help push the boat off the sandbars. When their mom came to pick them up, they were happy to get off the boat. The Bismarck-Mandan area got hit the hardest of any place we saw by the flood of 2011. There were several houses that were once on the river, and now they have 100-yard sandbars between their house and the water. A few houses still had sandbags surrounding them. We knew that it would happen at some point, and we figured it would happen sooner, but 1,000 miles into the trip, we got stopped by conservation officers. A quick chat, we were on our way.
Tuesday, August 19th, 1806. Winds of great violence distressed the expedition with clouds of sand that kept it from moving downriver until late afternoon. When the wind diminished, the expedition floated about 10 miles and camped on a sandbar near Apple Creek. Rain and wind made the night uncomfortable.
Guy looks like a professional slaloming through these dead trees along the river. He is an extreme pontoonist.
The Corps of Discovery, with the captains, about 38 enlisted men, and some civilian French boatmen, left St. Louis in 1804, knowing that the Mandan, Hadassah Indian villages in today's North Dakota were the place to spend the first winter on the trail. The captains planned to send some soldiers back to the United States after that winter, taking journals and maps that the captains had made, along with preserved plants and animal specimens. The group was called the Return Party, and the men going on to the Pacific Ocean were the Permanent Party.
Friday, October 19th, 1804. With a fine morning wind at their backs, the expedition proceeded on very well, noting more timber than common and at one point sighting 52 buffalo and 3 elk at one view.
We got stopped for the night at the Rifle Range boat dock. I was sleeping on the cot on the dock and felt raindrops. I jumped up, nearly falling in the river, seeing a storm was coming on us. I got Guy up, and we hung out in the outhouse while the storm passed.
When the Corps of Discovery left the Mandan Hadassah villages in the spring of 1805, the Permanent Party included 2 captains, 3 sergeants, 23 privates, and 5 civilians. All but one member of the Corps of Discovery survived the expedition. Sergeant Charles Floyd died of an infection from a ruptured appendix. The men, Sacagawea and baby Jean-Baptiste, suffered many illnesses and injuries, especially accidental axe and knife cuts. Private John Shields had a shoulder that became dislocated easily, and others would yank his arm until they got it back into place. The baby's face became hugely swollen from mosquito bites. Everyone suffered intestinal upsets, sometimes when their diets changed dramatically within a few days.
When we got to Mobridge, we decided to push through the night and make it home. Being on the big water and our depth finder working well, all we had to do was turn on the headlights, take turns driving, and by morning we'd be nearly home.
The remarkable round hills Captain Clark reported were frequented by the calumet bird. The party's hunters killed 4 elk, 6 deer, and a pelican. They also passed an abandoned Earth Lodge village, recorded by Captain Lewis as here first saw ruins of Mandan Nation.
It's Friday morning, July 3rd. Drove all night, about 7:50 a.m. Took turns driving and sleeping.
After a long push through the night, we made it home. Our family showed up to greet us in a limousine.
We did it.
Yes, we did.
2 weeks to the hour, and we're back home.
After we got the boat loaded on a trailer, we headed into town the way we started, Clark, Guy, and myself. We were both amazed throughout the trip on how the river travelers before us were able to make it upstream. It seems nearly impossible today, and we have much better technology. To those who came before us, we salute you.